All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our final program of the year. How much do you know about Halls Hill in Arlington? We are really glad to have you here with us tonight. My name is Hannah Daden-Felser, and I'm the chair of the Arlington Committee of 100. I'm going to be your moderator for this evening. For those of you newly joining us tonight, the Arlington Committee of 100 is an all-volunteer organization with a mission to foster open and vigorous discussion of timely community issues. We're focused on providing nonpartisan information on the issues of the day to our community members and community leaders. If you're watching us on Facebook Live and you think this is something your friends would like to hear, please consider sharing the Facebook Live to your page. To stay in touch with us, please like and follow our Facebook page. We publish our events through email announcements as well as Facebook events, and we'd love to have you continue to join us. We also are more than happy and very excited to have you on Zoom, where you also, if you're on Zoom, you get the opportunity to submit questions during the program. I do want to acknowledge and thank Arlington School Board Vice Chair Barbara Cannonen, who is joining us tonight. She is a very loyal attendee. Thank you, Barbara. Good to virtually see you. So I know the question on many of your minds is, what will next year look like for the Arlington Committee of 100? We are currently planning for next year, and we're conducting meetings with partners to determine what our future can look like. Our board's goal as of now is to provide a hybrid option for next year in order to regain some of that sense of community with our members and also continue the success that we found in the virtual world over this past year. You can expect to hear more from us over the coming months as we develop details. It is all still in process. We are going to return to our habit of taking a break over the summer in our programming, and we hope you enjoy lots of great time reconnecting with friends and family. Stay tuned for announcements from us on what Committee of 100 membership will look like going forward. And we're going to aim to see you again in September, either in person or through your computer or device. We hope to see you. For those of you who were with us last month, you will notice that we pivoted our topic for June. We previously announced that we were going to be discussing marijuana and its future in Virginia and Arlington. Our program committee was in the process of conducting interviews with community leaders on the topic, and we ended up resolving that that topic is better suited to being a future program when we have a little bit more information to present to you. As you know, we work really hard to keep our topics timely, relevant, and substantive, and this isn't the first time we've pivoted in light of development of recent current events. Thanks as always to Patrick Hope and Jerry Laporte, our program co-chairs, for helping with the guidance on our programs. A special thank you to Jeannie Broyhill, who did lots of research, legwork, and preparation to help make the decision to pivot, and ended up with a really fantastic program that we're so excited about. Jeannie's been working with Wilma and getting us all set up for a program I've been looking forward to all month. So we're glad to have you joining us here tonight for this program. We do want to give a final thank you for the year to the Arlington Community Federal Credit Union for being our sponsor for this program year. They've supported us in an unprecedented, how many times have we said that word this year? And I still stumble over it. An unprecedented season, and they've helped give us the flexibility to offer these programs completely free to the community during a time where Arlingtonians needed timely information, probably more than ever. You will see that this program is going to be followed by a Q&A with Wilma, which should be really great. And it's a great opportunity to get to hear get your questions to her directly. If you're with us on Zoom, you can submit questions using that Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we're going to get to as many questions as possible. Those of you who have been with us for many years know that we often change it up for our last program of the year and focus on things like history or high-level community engagement conversations. We're really excited that Wilma Jones has agreed to be our key speaker tonight to share the history of her family and her neighborhood here in Arlington. The Halls Hill neighborhood is one of 3 historically Black neighborhoods in Arlington, and it has an incredibly rich history and families who have been part of the Arlington community for generations. I've been getting to know Wilma over the past few weeks, and she is really quite the presence in Arlington as a historian, as an activist, and as a professional. I feel really lucky to know her, and I'm so excited to introduce her to you tonight, though I know many of you already know her very well because she is a woman about town in many ways. Wilma is a 4th generation Arlingtonian and a resident of the Halls Hill neighborhood. She is from the Halls Hill community, hence our topic tonight. She's just She grew up a few blocks away from me. I was over in Tara Leeway and she was over in Halls Hill. She's an award-winning blogger, author, public speaker, historian. And what I learned when I was reading her bio is she's also a positivity expert, which I love. And Wilma, we're going to need to talk about that at some point because that was a fun part of your bio to learn. Some of you may know her as the author of My Halls Hill Family, which is a historical memoir of her family and the neighborhood that they've been a part of for generations. When I finish introducing her, if you are in Zoom, take a look in the chat box because I am going to send you a link to her book. You can buy it on Amazon, or even better, you can buy it on a visit to the Arlington Black History Museum on Columbia Pike or at the From One Hand to Another gallery in Green Valley. I have my book right here. I've been reading it. You know, Wilma, I intended to be really far into this book by now. My problem is I'm going slowly because each page has so much in it that I'm doing all this background research on everything going on in the country, as all the things that were going on in Halls Hill. So I'm only a few chapters in and I hope to finish it in this next week, but it's such a good read that I'm really taking my time with it. I highly, highly recommend it. It's very engaging. She has 2 other books that are themed around positive psychology and bringing that into the workplace. So when you take a look at her Amazon page, you can check out those books too. And her business, Wilma J Consulting, she does business consulting, including helping with teamwork and increased productivity. Wilma also has a show with Arlington Independent Media called The Untold Stories of Black Arlington. If you're interested in viewing those episodes, you can go to the Arlington Independent Media YouTube page. Those are great friends of ours at the Arlington Independent Media, long-term partners at the Committee of 100. Those programs are usually streamed on the first Sunday of the month. So that is it for me. I'm going to pass it off to Wilma. In her presentation, she is going to have a video that she shared. I told her before we got on, I was getting chills at the end of her video because it's just really, really special. So I'm excited to share it with you, to share Wilma here with you. And again, take a look at the chat box in just a moment because I really encourage picking up her book and the link will be in your chat to buy. All right, Wilma, passing it off to you.
Thanks, Hannah. Good evening, everyone. Wow, we have a lot of people here. You all want to know about Halls Hill and Black Arlington, and I'm excited about that. Again, thank you to the Committee of 100 for giving me the opportunity to present this. So I'm going to just share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Looks good.
Great. So I have kind of expanded the subject to not only Halls Hill, but the whole experience of Black Arlington. You see here the sign for the Halls Hill wall that was put up courtesy of the Halls Hill Highview Park Historic Preservation Foundation. I think I said the name right. I'm sorry if I didn't. It's a group of Halls Hill residents and people who were born in Halls Hill, who grew up in Halls Hill, who worked with the county in order to put a marker up to remind everybody about this example of institutional racism. So I'm going to be speaking about the experience of Black Arlington and focusing especially on Halls Hill, but I want to give you an overall understanding. And as Hannah said, okay. I want to start with the introduction to my book that I usually use at the beginning of each of my presentations in order to kind of set a level playing field for everybody. So you can find out about the My Halls Hill Family Project. I'm Wilma Jones, and I got my start right here at 1909 in this little brick house in the heart of Halls Hill, right down the street from the playground. Halls Hill is a small neighborhood in North Arlington. It got its start right after the Civil War in 1866, when it was inhabited by former slaves and some free Black people. Now, it started with about 200 or so families by the end of the 1800s, and in its prime We're over 600 households here thriving on Halls Hill. Now, my mom and dad, George and Idabelle Jones, were born on Halls Hill and they lived here for their entire lives. My dad was known as Mr. George, or to his close friends, he was Pap Jones. Everybody knew my mom as Miss Idabelle. The families here on Halls Hill supported one another in their endeavors and our organizations. We had our own churches, our own businesses, our own sweet shop. I mean, here on Halls Hill, some people did some really special things. I, like so many of my neighbors, I had a great childhood here. In Halls Hill, the mindset was gratitude, hard work, and faith. You see, despite what society told us, we knew we could be successful. And the reason we knew it is because we saw success right here. Now, this was the kind of neighborhood where if your neighbor saw you doing something that was wrong, they came to discipline you. And when you got home, your mama and daddy gave you a second version. Yeah, it was because of the families, my family, and all of the people in Halls Hill who influenced me that I grew up to be a confident, well-spoken, and might I even say intelligent and bold woman. I'm a college grad with over a 30-year successful career in information technology sales. But I've also executive produced music CDs. I wrote, pitched, and executive produced a TV show. I became a successful grant consultant, reaping over $50 million in federal and foundation awards for minority colleges. Now, I decided I wanted to be a public speaker, and now I'm a speaker as well as having written and self-published 3 books. And of course, I'm a community activist. But other Halls Hill residents have accomplished so much more. And we started our public school education at a segregated school called Langston. We went to Brownie and Boy Scout meetings in the basement of Fire Station 8, the first African-American staffed fire station below the Mason-Dixon line. Our community churches supported us with prayer meetings, morning service, movie nights, and even sponsored beach trips. Yes, Halls Hill gave us roots, but it also gave us everything we needed to branch out. Now, as I prepare to start my 3rd term as the president of the local civic association, I will admit Halls Hill has changed a lot. In the last 20 years, we've been greatly gentrified. But I still love Halls Hill and the Highview Park Halls Hill neighborhood that it is now. You see, my cousins, my siblings, and I, we are the dream of our great-grandmother, Elizabeth King, a slave who came to Halls Hill and bought a house at 1923 North Dinwiddie Street, sometime around 1910. If you grew up in Halls Hill, if your family was in Halls Hill, if you knew folk in Halls Hill, or if you just want to know more about what made Halls Hill such a special neighborhood, I invite you to join our virtual Halls Hill community and reminisce, inform, share, and smile. Remember, we may not be able to save Grandma's house, but we can save her history. I hope you join me. I hope you enjoyed that. And now let's talk about Black Arlington. So let's talk about the introduction to Arlington's Black population. And this picture here is a picture of Freedman's Village in Arlington, which at that time was called Alexandria County. So from the slave ships to Arlington's Black neighborhoods. Many of you, I'm sure, are aware of the 1619 Project from the New York Times Magazine. In August of 1619 was when it's been documented that the first ship bringing enslaved Africans that were sold to the colonists came to Virginia. In 1844, the Green Valley neighborhood. It's agreed that the Green Valley neighborhood was established. And it was interesting to me when I read about this, because this is even before Black people, most Black people were free. And it was because a free Black couple, Sarah and Levi Jones, purchased 14 acres of land overlooking 4 Mile Run, which established Green Valley as Arlington's first Black neighborhood. Many people don't know that the name Green Valley comes from Green Valley Plantation, a plantation owned by a white man in Green Valley. But Sarah and Levi Jones were very unique people in that they purchased the land and began to sell plots after the Civil War to the formerly enslaved Black people who were looking for a place to live, many of them coming from Freedmen's Village. Now, Freedmen's Village was what was called a contraband camp, and it was started in 1863 after Black people were emancipated. There were other contraband camps in DC and in Anacostia, and actually one even on the mall, what is now the mall. But after Black people in like Southern Maryland and Virginia and North Carolina and other places, discovered that they were no longer enslaved and that these contraband camps were established by the Freedmen's Bureau, which was a cabinet level bureau, that the role was to give these formerly enslaved people education, teach them to read, give them trades. And at Freedmen's Village, they also had places to live. And one of the things that was most interesting about Freedmen's Village was that the land that Freedmen's Village was on was a part of Robert E. Lee's wife's family. And the US Congress had set up a law that said that if you owned property in the southern states, which are, of course, are fighting against the Union, that you had to come to Washington in order to pay your taxes, or the government would take your land. The government took her land and opened Freedmen's Village. There were over 1,100 acres of land. There were homes built, and the Freedmen's Village was around until the late 1800s. And it was an incredible place that was the kind of birth of a large community of Black people in Arlington. Now, the Freedmen's Village was near a number of other Black communities as it kind of branched out. But one of the things that people ask me a lot, because the Halls Hill Civic Association is called the John M. Langston Civic Citizens Association, and the elementary school, the segregated elementary school in Halls Hill was named after John M. Langston. And they say, what's the deal with John M. Langston? Well, John M. Langston was highly revered by Black people because he was the Inspector General of the Freedmen's Bureau. And he took his job seriously to make sure that the federal government did right by the formerly enslaved as well as he could. And then in 1866, right after the end of the Civil War, Halls Hill was established. It was a neighborhood, again in North Arlington, named after the white plantation owner, Basil Hall, who purchased 327 acres of land in 1950. After the Civil War, it developed into a working class Black community. Now, following the period of Reconstruction, there was a lot of pressure on the village because white people were not happy that Black people were starting to gain wealth. Arlington was about 30% Black at that time. And the white landowners especially wanted to get the Black people out of Arlington as much as possible. So there was a big effort to reduce the power of the Freedmen's Bureau. And in 1872, the Bureau was completely eliminated. So the federal government and the white Arlington developers, and especially political leaders, pressured the Freedmen's Village residents to leave. Now, after Freedmen's Village was starting to get this pressure, the Black people said, oh, okay, we need to figure out, where to go. We need to come out of here. So there were other communities established near Freedmen's Village. One of them was Queen City. Queen City was a portion of Freedmen's Village. It was built around Mount Olive Baptist Church, which was originally in Freedmen's Village. And I'll be talking later about how some of the institutional racism had churches moving from Black community to Black community as they were pressured. East Arlington was right next to Queen City. And one bit of information that a lot of people don't know about East Arlington is that they also had an all-Black volunteer fire department. But around the time that Arlington was starting to pay white firefighters, East Arlington and the Halls Hill Volunteer Fire Department were trying to request from the County Board of Supervisors that the Black firefighters also have some compensation. East Arlington was a little more vocal than the Halls Hill Volunteer Fire Department. And later, when the federal government declared eminent domain on Queen City and East Arlington to make the Cloverleaf ramp near the Pentagon and near Crystal City, they completely demolished the East Arlington Fire Department rather than let it move to another Black neighborhood because they were a little too radical for what they wanted. Now in 1880, the Johnson's Hill neighborhood began when a white farmer, J.R. Johnston, subdivided his farm and started selling 10-acre lots to African Americans. Now, that Johnson's Hill neighborhood was also on Columbia Pike near Freedmen's Village. It's now called Arlington View. And the Johnson's Hill neighborhood is where the historic Syphax family lived. And if you don't know about the Syphax family, you definitely need to Google it. They are, they have a long, long history and descendants of former slaves as well as a white master. So they have a very interesting story. Now, the Butler Homes neighborhood was started by two leaders from Freedmen's Village. And this was the first kind of middle-class Black neighborhood. And when segregation happened in 1912, this was one of the first neighborhoods that they tried to move Black people out of because white people were not happy that these Black enclaves were happening. So this map, originally by Nancy Perry as a part of her George Mason University history PhD dissertation, reflects the neighborhoods that were in Arlington where Black people lived around 1900. Now, neighborhoods included churches, schools, businesses, social organizations. There were lodges and things like that. And so those neighborhoods, Green Valley, Halls Hill, Johnson's Hill, those three are still here. Roslyn, Queen City, East Arlington, Hatfield, all gone. And we'll talk about Roslyn in a little bit. The issues about Black Arlington in Roslyn and the fact that the Black people were building row homes in Arlington were part of what we're addressing right now with our missing middle. If those institutional racism, institutionally racist laws and zoning and things had not been established, there would definitely be more types and variety of homes and residences in Arlington. And then enclaves, that's where smaller groups of Black residents lived. And you can see that of the enclaves, none exist today. And again, segregation and institutional racism are the reason. So the foundational organizations in the three Black communities were Callaway Methodist Church, again, started right after the formerly enslaved became free, started at a dairy farm called Sagmuller's Dairy, which is actually where Virginia Hospital Center is today. Mount Salvation Baptist Church got its start in Pelhamtown, a Black neighborhood up on Old Dominion Drive, Glebe Road area that was basically all the Black people had to leave Pelhamtown because of a couple of different reasons. One was that the county said that everybody in that particular area had to get access to water and sewer, but then they kept giving all kinds of barriers to the Black people who wanted to do it. The other was that, and this was a story that was told by the late Deacon William Pelham, who grew up in Pelhamtown. His family owned much of Pelhamtown, and he talked about how after Mount Salvation was built, they would come home from church. It happened a couple of times, and when they came home, some white people had burned down a resident's home. And so they started leaving somebody in the neighborhood when they went to church every Sunday. And they also had a train, not a train, like a trolley line that came down. And they said that white people would throw lit pieces of fabric and things to try to catch the grass on fire to burn the homes down. So Mount Salvation is on Halls Hill, but got started in Pelhamtown. Halls Hill Volunteer Fire Station, now known as Fire Station 8, started in 1918. Really, really important foundational organization. One of the things that I heard growing up and as common knowledge was that Cherrydale was the big bastion of the Ku Klux Klan in the 20s and 30s, and Black people who did much of their business and things in DC, especially in Georgetown, which at that time was all Black, would come through Cherrydale, and sometimes people would chase them and shoot at them and the like. And the word is that once you got to Halls Hill Volunteer Fire Station and could turn into the fire station, you were safe. It also was the first place that had a payphone and, as my father said, a Coca-Cola machine. Langston School was opened in 1925. It was a Rosenwald school that was a foundation that the founder of the Sears Roebuck Company funded to help educate African Americans in the former slave states. And the community had to raise money, the foundation gave money, and the local school system had to agree to support and to manage. And before Langston, there was a school called Sumner, but Langston was the critical part of the Halls Hill neighborhood. And then in 1938, the John M. Langston Citizens Association started. Then in Johnson's Hill, you had Mount Olive Baptist Church, the oldest Black Baptist church in the county. You had Jefferson School, then the second Jefferson School, which were only elementary schools or primary, as they called them. And then you had Hoffman Boston Junior High, which opened in 1932, the first secondary school, and it later became Hoffman Boston Junior Senior High. Then you had St. John's Baptist Church and the Johnson's Hill Civic Association. And then in Green Valley, you had the Mount Zion Baptist Church, which began as the old Bell Church in Freedman's Village. And then when Freedman's Village was closed, it was moved. And I believe it actually moved to Queen City. And then when they demolished Queen City, it moved to Green Valley. You had Kemper School, started in 1876. It was renamed in honor of Charles Drew in 1953, so the Drew School. And then you had Lomax AME Zion Church, started off again in Freedman's Village as Wesley Zion Church, then became Little Zion Church. And when it moved to Green Valley, where it's still located, it is known as Lomax African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. Then Macedonia Baptist Church began in 1922, and then the Green Valley Civic Association in the 30s. So the village closes, Arlington grows, and the developers gained political power. This picture is a picture of a newspaper article talking about the village being abolished. So on December 7th, 1887, residents were served with eviction notices. The community leaders attempted to advocate for the residents. They requested monetary compensation for the value of the properties. Some residents got money, but it was far less than what the properties were worth. So you can see that the farms, mechanical shops, hospitals, homes, schools, and everything just gone. So the federal government workforce grows. And that was a big issue for Arlington because that's when Arlington became a bedroom community. And you can see here clerks leaving the Treasury Department, which was published in Harper's Weekly. So you see that, people working in the Washington federal government was a big opportunity for Arlington to grow. So when the Union won the Civil War, it really transformed the government because it established a supremacy over the states. So the Department of Agriculture was established. And many people don't know that part of what is now Arlington Cemetery was actually owned and managed by the Department of Agriculture as a farm. And then when the government established this banking system, they got rid of freedmen's, they moved the Department of Agriculture out, and that's when it started to become the cemetery. So county leadership. In 1870, Alexandria City and County split. And there was an organization called the Good Citizens League. They became a political force in the county. They were comprised of white land-owning men. And to be very honest with you, that's the only good citizens that they cared about were other white landowning men. This begins a major effort to get Black people to move out and to suppress them. During Reconstruction, Black people were about 30% of the Arlington population. And when the white developers and leaders and boards of supervisors and all of these people in power tried to get Black people out, they found out a very interesting thing. And that's that Black people own 60% of their homes. That of the Black people in the county, 60% of them own their homes. So when you own your land, you're not going anywhere, even if it's hard. And one of the things about these Black neighborhoods is that the families stayed in the neighborhoods. The kids didn't leave. So my great-grandmother lived at 1923 North Dinwiddie Street. Her daughter lived in the 1900 block of Edison Street. My aunt and two of my uncles and my father all bought homes within 2 or 3 blocks of their grandmother and mother. And that was the norm in the Black communities. So it was kind of hard to move them out, but they did their best to suppress them. And then the Commonwealth's attorney, Crandall Mackey, is elected. And you see him standing in this picture in front of a bar in Roslyn. And he had a big thing about cleaning up Roslyn. Roslyn was, it was pretty much it was open 24 hours. They had some unsavory types of businesses, but it also had a thriving Black community. And the Black community, most of them lived in row houses. And the white people didn't like that. So that's when a lot of the things happened that helped to change the zoning so that lots of types of homes couldn't be built in Arlington. So farmland in the county declined from 15,000 acres to 8,100 acres in 10 years. And again, Black residents' home ownership level, super high. So developers were the political leaders, and they made the rules to benefit themselves and other white landowners. So these things all lead to segregation walls around Halls Hill. And this happens, first of all, because the leaders in neighboring Alexandria said, when they split Alexandria County and Alexandria City, we think the county got more than they should have. And they went to court and they filed a number of lawsuits. And by 1929, they had won lawsuits and 3,000 acres of land was returned from the county to the city. That stunned Arlington's developers and leaders. And they said, okay, we got to do something about this. So when you look at the Black neighborhood development, at that time, Black residents were now 12% of the county population, because of course, they did a pretty decent job of getting rid of a number of people in Freedmen's Village. And so a lot of people then went and lived in DC or in other areas. So again, members of the Black communities began to construct row houses or connected homes in Roslyn and Johnson Hill. And you can see the gray home that still stands in Johnson's Hill, which was that type of home that the white developers and the Board of Supervisors wanted to get rid of. Now, there were no water or sewer connections made available in the Black neighborhoods. So the new schools were finally built to support the overcrowding and the poor facilities. And that was when the Kemper School was rebuilt and when Langston was built and the like. And then new churches, again, built in the Black communities when they were forced out of the neighborhoods that were closed. But then the legal onslaught begins. In 1912, segregation becomes legal in the state, and was legal until 1917. And if you go back and look, you can see that the neighborhoods that were the enclaves that did not have the commerce in them, where they were just residents living there, completely pretty much moved. White people bought the houses, they just made things difficult. So then the states begin to lobby the federal government about zoning. And the Coolidge administration says, okay, they approve everything. So these zoning ordinances are, I mean, these laws are passed that give the states the ability to do zoning. And Arlington was very successful in getting their representatives in Richmond to develop laws or zoning rules that only affected Arlington. And so these ordinances were allowing the whites to begin to put pressure on the Black neighborhoods and the enclaves. So you see this picture here, which is the zoning ordinance from April 26, 1930. This is the document that gave the county developers the permission to wall in Halls Hill. So you see this here, the setback and yard requirements of this ordinance shall not apply to any necessary retaining wall or to any fence or wall which is less than 5 feet high, and providing nothing herein shall event the construction of a rear line fence or wall to a height not exceeding 7 feet. So what this did was that every neighborhood, the Woodlawn neighborhood specifically was the first, that touched Halls Hill. So you had these backyards that shared a property line. Well, just like now, when you go to a development and you look in the model home and they say, do you want granite or marble or Corian countertops? Do you want a master bedroom on the first floor or upstairs? Well, when people moved into these homes, they had the choice of, did they want a cinder block wall, a brick wall, or a wooden fence? And they had to choose them because that was the way that they blocked in Halls Hill. And they just didn't want Black people walking through the white neighborhoods. So initially when Halls Hill was established, it was only one way in and one way out, and that was Culpeper Street. That had my father said he remembers when the flashing yellow light went up there. And then later on, especially after the hospital was established, Edison Street was opened. So at this time, there was only 2 ways in and 2 ways out. So within the 10 years between 1930 and 1940, every side of Halls Hill that was not bordering on that bordered on another white neighborhood had either a 7-foot cinder block wall or a 6-foot security fence. And if you go down to where the marker is now and down at 18th and Culpeper Street, you will see that the wall still stands, most of the wall still stands, and you'll see the different parts of it. So again, these walls remained until 1966 when the segregated John M. Langston School closed. And with that wall, the children who were assigned to Woodlawn Elementary School would have had to walk 18 blocks to reach their new school. 67 parents and the John M. Langston Citizens Association lobbied the county board, and they finally agreed right before school opened to modify the county master plan, and they got an easement for the home where Culpeper Street intersects 17th Street, and on one side it says Culpeper, on the other side the street's name is Abington. There was a house on the Culpeper side of that. They initially bought an easement and opened it up so that the children could walk on the side of the house. Eventually, the county bought the house and opened the street. Now, let's talk a little bit about school desegregation. Even more institutional racism placed on the Black community. So Constance Carter of Green Valley, who moved to Green Valley from DC, attempted to enroll in W&L in 1947. She was taking advanced courses at the school in DC. And when she came to Hoffman Boston, she was like, oh my goodness, no, this is far below my capabilities. And in May 1947, the school board did a study and found that 26% of Arlington students did not attend public schools. 23% of those students were Black, and most of them went to school in DC, where the schools were better. And part of that reason was, if you were a Black kid who wanted to go to college, you couldn't go to college on a Hoffman Boston diploma because it was not qualified. It did not meet the requirements. Well, when all of these Black people started saying, okay, we want to go to W&L, the county said, okay, we need to put some money into HB so that we can make it qualified, so that we can stop these Black people from trying to go to the white school. In September 1949, 2 more kids who came from DC, they sued, and their cases were denied. Finally, Constance Carter's case, after many appeals and back and forth, it was denied in 1949. And interestingly, the judge said that if there were Black students who were able to do that kind of work at W&L, then it would be made available. It was just very insulting. So in October of 49, 18 students began attending a vocational school in Manassas. And this is very interesting. Many people know about Jenny Dean Park down on 4 Mile Run in Green Valley. Well, the woman who ran the vocational school was Jenny Dean. And the Arlington County schools paid for those 18 Black students to go to the school in Manassas rather than allow them to attend the vocational classes like shop and auto mechanics and the like at the W&L school. So in May of 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. Black people think, okay, finally, we're going to be getting somewhere on this. Not in Virginia. Finally, after 2 years of trying to work with the county, 2 years after the Brown v. Board of Education decision, the NAACP, supporting Clarissa Thompson and the other plaintiffs, filed the discrimination lawsuit in Arlington County in order to get Black people to go to Stratford Junior High and W&L. On July 31st of 1957, the federal court ruled that desegregation had to begin. And Virginia legislators were very upset. So,
hey, Wilma, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to give us a time check because we've got a couple of questions we want to make sure to have time.
I'm sorry. Let me rush through these.
Don't worry. It's also engaging. I almost lost track because I'm taking notes.
I know, but we only got 15 minutes, so let me get through it. So this is what happens. There are numbers of rulings. On Saturday, September 7th, there's a major win for the plaintiffs in the case. And the next day, the Ku Klux Klan burned a cross in Dr. Harold Johnson's front lawn. He was a Black doctor who lived on Lexington Street in Arlington, and he was one of the plaintiffs. So there are all kinds of things that happen. The Arlington sheriff delivers summons. My mother was one of the people who had to go down and testify and try to be completely intimidated because basically Virginia had made laws stating that if you helped the NAACP, you were in violation. In fall of 1958, Norfolk, Charlottesville, and Warren County school boards closed their white public schools, but not the Black ones, in order to keep Black people from going there. So these are the plaintiffs. On the left of each column are the names of the parents, and on the right are the names of the children. That's my brother, Michael Jones. Lance was one of the 4, Gloria Thompson, and Ronald Deskins. And just to give you an understanding of what Virginia thought was separate but equal, these are the courses offered at Hoffman Boston in 1957-58, the year before desegregation. These are the courses offered at W&L. Separate, but not equal. And this is the Getty image picture that was on the front page of the Washington Post the day after the desegregation. And that's Gloria, Lance, Ronnie, and my brother Mike. So as you can see, the first Arlington school was desegregated in 59. Langston was closed in 66, but Arlington schools were not fully desegregated until 1971 when Drew was desegregated. So just in conclusion, I mentioned that Queen City and East Arlington were demolished as a result of eminent domain from the government. And I just want to let everyone know that the reason that there are still the 3 historically Black neighborhoods, or known as that, in Arlington, was because of the prescient work that was done by these 3 Black civic associations once the community development block grant funding and things became available from the federal government that came to the states and localities. You had to create a neighborhood conservation plan, and Johnson's Hill was the first. Halls Hill was in that same group, and then in the next group was Green Valley. And those things cemented our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Wilma. I have so many notes, and I know there are a lot of people in the audience who are saying that there's so much content that they're dying to absorb. And I want to let everyone know this is being recorded. So there's been a few people ask if they can go back and watch this again. And the answer is absolutely yes. It will be on we're live right now on our Facebook page, and that recording will be up there shortly. That's the quickest one that will be up, but within the next few days, we are going to have this program live on our website, arlingtoncommittee100.org. We're an all-volunteer organization, so I never make commitments on how fast that will be up on the website. Wilma is a community volunteer. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. So keep an eye on our website for that recording. So a number of questions that came in, and I'm going to get to as many as we can. Those of you who join us every month know that we never make it through as many as we always want to.
And sorry, I ran a little over.
All good. It was really good stuff. And I'll just say, y'all, as I am, like I said, I haven't even been able to finish this book yet because it prompts you and inspires you to do so much extra research around the content and learn the context and the history. So if you're looking to learn your local history and your national history, Wilma's book is really the right place to start. So please make sure you read that. I am, as I often do, I'm about to mispronounce someone's name here, so apologies in advance. Althea asks, is it true that people in Black communities in South Arlington had to choose their walking route to visit friends in Halls Hill?
I'm not aware of that one.
Okay, all right.
Not saying it's not true, but I don't know about it.
Okay.
And I will admit, I am not the Green Valley expert. I'm the Halls Hill person. And I've been encouraging the Green Valley folks to please write a book because their history is even more rich. I mean, just incredibly rich.
Awesome. Mary asks, what does environmental equity and justice look like for Halls Hill? That's a big question.
First of all, it looks like we need somebody to protect the residents who are living close to the Virginia Hospital Center who are dealing with just the worst. So it's no question about the fact that the county many times tried to move Halls Hill. Actually, I was astounded. I did not know that when Arlington Hospital Foundation was established and got their state charter and all of that, that there was a whole group of developers that tried to get the county to move the entire Halls Hill community to Green Valley by changing the zoning so that it could only be for convalescent homes and nursing homes and things that supported the hospital. So from an environmental perspective, we've dealt with a lot. My grandmother's house, which was right across the street from where I live now, did not have indoor sewer until 1953. And part of that was financial, but the biggest part was, and again, this was true for all of Halls Hill. When Woodlawn was built in 1943, 44, every house had indoor plumbing, sewer, and water. Halls Hill, they had to fight for it.
Wow. Well, thank you. I'm gonna make, this is a big question, so I'm gonna make this our last question for the evening. Ron asks, you've spoken to this a little bit, so I'm hoping you'll expand. Ron asks, how can Halls Hill retain its historic African-American identity despite gentrification? So you've told us about what the past has been like and how we've gotten to today. What does that look like going forward?
It's going to be hard because, Halls Hill is, almost completely gentrified. There are, I think the last time that that it was checked, it was like 20%, 22%, and I'm sure it's less than that now. Part of my issue is that the county should have done a better job in providing options for developers to build homes that would address more people in the middle of the income. So instead of, giving them, the opportunity to tear down a 1,500 square foot Rambler and build a 5,000 square foot home. And there was actually an article, an opinion piece written in Arlington Now that I totally agree with, that talks about having the county incent developers so that they, instead of building one big mega house on a 1/4 acre lot, that they build, that's for $1 million, that they build 4 units that are $300,000 a piece, that allow people, my nieces, my nephews, my cousins, they can't, and Portia Clark from Green Valley said this, our kids, my mother and father were able to buy in the same neighborhood. My kids can't buy an $800,000 house when they're, coming out of college and stuff. They just, they don't have it like that. And I think that part of the problem and part of what needs to be the solution so that some of these people can come back to these neighborhoods, because I know they would love to, is for the county board to listen to us and be more creative about the housing that can be built in Arlington. But the other issue is that Halls Hill feels like we are the affordable housing capital of North Arlington, and that's not fair. And so, yes, we want to do what helps more people come back, but we also do not want to be the only place that has an affordable place that you can live. So these things need to be spread across the county, but without having some attention to that, as I told my, some of the people I've talked to, I don't know whether I will have, whether there will be people who are descendants of Elizabeth King still in this neighborhood 50 years from now. I hope so, but I wouldn't put my paycheck on it.
And I'll share for those of you watching us, what Wilma was talking about brings up a really important conversation around missing middle housing. For those of you who are interested in learning a bit more about that, you can tune into our program last month that we had that discusses within the conversation missing middle housing. We discuss it within a regional and Northern Virginia context. So if you'd like to learn more of that, there are many resources that you can look to, but that is one of those resources. So I think, again, please check that chat. Oh, would you plug for me real quick, Wilma? There is a great website that we just have about a minute, but will you plug your website that you run to retain the Halls Hill history?
You can go to hallshill.com. I usually post every Sunday, but I will be very honest with you. The Citizens Association has been involved in a number of really important things, and I haven't blogged in about 3 weeks. But now that we're getting ready to take a break for the summer, I'll be blogging again every Sunday, starting in July. But there are there's lots of info there. A lot of perspectives other than mine. I've got some videos from some of the longtime Halls Hill residents. One, Mrs. Mary Koblitz, who is a contemporary of my parents. Just wonderful interview that she agreed to do and is on the website. So And you can communicate with me, click on the website and, send me an email. Love to engage with folks. But again, thank you, Committee of 100, for the opportunity to spread the information about Black Arlington.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wilma. And Wilma, thank you also. Some of y'all have heard from our annual meeting last month that Wilma just joined our Arlington Committee of 100 board. We're really grateful to have her perspective. It's just going to be really important as we move forward into the future, along with our other board members. So thanks, Wilma, for joining us. I'd ask y'all to just stick with us for about 3 more minutes. We're going to wrap up here. So thank you again to Wilma for being here. Wilma, like I said, Wilma and I actually grew up around the corner from each other and really I've known her by name. We're really just getting to know each other. And I'm so excited and I'm glad we get to help share her story, her family's story here tonight, as well as a story for all of Arlington that's so critical and is really important for all of us to know. For those of you who are longtime members of the Committee of 100, or if you've just come into the fold over this past year, I want to thank you for joining us. Our season concludes tonight, and our organization has benefited from loyal and dedicated members who have seen us through many eras, a significantly expanded reach in a new audience and virtual environment, and we also have a strong and experienced board of strategic and passionate leaders. Leading this organization over the past year has been an enormous privilege, and I'm so grateful to each one of you who has been part of this with us. We have been riding the roller coaster of our lives together, and I'm sure that you are as happy as I am to be coming down off the ride. I've loved having you. First, you were in my dining room. Now you're in my home office. You can see my plants. It looks a little bit better than at the beginning of the season. I'm going to be continuing on as chair for a second term next year, so you'll continue to see me moderating next year's panels. But if you see me while we're on break this summer at a community festivals or events, please stop by and say hi. I'd love to meet our long-term members and those who have just come to join us this year, and I'd love to hear what you thought over the year. Thank you again to our program committee for coordinating this program, especially Jeannie Broyhill. Thank you to Patrick Hope and Jerry Laporte, who have been leading our program committee all year and have been doing great work and consistently lead one of the most interesting meetings I'm in every month. And our former chairs, Scott Pedowitz, Timon Honda, and Brian Marroquin, who have been our behind the scenes supports this whole season. Scott's been helping me out a lot tonight in particular. So thank you. And thank you to our whole board for all of your leadership, insight, and vision this year. Once again, if you would like to view the recording for tonight, you can go onto our Facebook page, Arlington Committee of 100, or you can visit our website, arlingtoncommittee100.org, and the recording will be up there in a couple days. I also want to give a shout out. We have a couple folks in the audience who I know are really fantastic. We're really compelled to share this with their networks. It's no surprise to anyone who knows Wilma that she is a fantastic communicator, and we have gotten some great traction. I'm getting all these notifications and pings about the support we've gotten to share this program tonight. So thank you to everyone who shared this program. Have a great summer. Can't wait to see you in September. I miss you already. Good night.